Say what you want about Far Cry 5 as a game, but you simply cannot deny that the soundtrack might be a contender for the best soundtrack in any video game. Although Far Cry 5 was released in 2018, there's just something nostalgic about hearing the ambience of American country music. I know it's quite weird to start off this video on Far Cry 5 by obsessing over the soundtrack, but I felt like I just had to get that off my chest first. Anyway, let's get back on track with the actual video. So, earlier this year, I went on a crazy spree of just replaying Ubisoft games, whether that be Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, and even Far Cry. But there's one that stuck out to me the most, and that is Far Cry 5, a game that's often heavily criticized and may not be the most loved out of the entire series. That title of course goes to Far Cry 3, but when I replayed Far Cry 5, I did not realize how good this game actually is. You see, Far Cry 3 established a good solid blueprint for the franchise. Games like Far Cry 4 and Primal were stuck with this blueprint. However, there enters Far Cry 5 and Ubisoft wanted change. They were driven to avoid things becoming repetitive or boring, so they made quite a few changes that in my opinion improved the game. The chaotic and immersive open world is of course maintained quite well, and without a doubt this is still a Far Cry game. To me, it might even be one of the best ones. Let's start with the world of Far Cry 5, and oh boy is it a good one. Since the beginning of the Far Cry games, we've always been thrown into these unique worlds, and so far they've all been excellent. There's a common theme in the previous Far Cry games, and that is survival. There's the factor of facing up against untamed, unpredictable environments, where survival meant not just facing humans, but also dangerous wildlife, and the unforgiving forces of nature. But Far Cry 5 shakes things up by choosing an entirely different setting, and it stands out from its predecessors in a big way. It carves its own distinct identity that's quite impossible to ignore, and that is Hope County. This is a fictional world set in Montana, USA. The setting of Far Cry 5 is quite a lot different to the other Far Cry games. It's a lot less worn down and overgrown. The setting of Hope County is completely filled to the brim with landscapes, lakes, hills, and a shit ton of trees that the developers just copied and pasted into each part of the map. You know, now that I look back on the world, it kind of gives me Days Gone vibes, but without the zombies. Well, kind of without the zombies. I'll elaborate a little more on that in a bit. Throughout Hope County, there's settlements, small towns and ranches that are just scattered throughout the world. Every part of the map has its own unique vibe and atmosphere. Fall's End represents the rural farming country, while Fate Seed's Henbane River area is all about lush forests and water. And as for Jacob Seed's Whitetail Mountains, it's a stunning mountainous national park that will often present some pretty stunning views. One thing I noticed that was quite a big difference was that in the previous games, such as Far Cry 3, 4 and even Primal, there's a distinct threat of wildlife always active throughout the game's worlds. However, in Far Cry 5, this threat of wildlife is much less apparent. That's not to say that there's none though. There's also the implementation of NPCs that are refreshingly not all trying to completely obliterate you for just existing. The world of Far Cry 5 is calm, chaotic and vast all into one, which makes the setting of Hope County a different one, but also familiar. By far the most underrated aspect is the direction that Ubisoft took when it came to the compass in the game. They added a refreshing approach by simply removing cluttered icons, such as objectives, collectibles, and you name it. The moment that we step foot into the open world of Far Cry 5, Ubisoft practically gives us the freedom to let us do what we want, instead of forcing a big fat marker on your screen by telling you to go here. The idea of freedom and exploration is very apparent right off the bat, which I loved. I just wish Ubisoft did this for many of their other games, Assassin's Creed. The idea of simply being able to explore random encounters, missions, hunting, and even fishing is a massive positive, so kudos to Ubisoft for that. Now let's talk about the actual plot, or rather story of Far Cry 5. First off, I'm a big fan of the story, and whilst many people may not be, to me the idea of some sort of crazy religious cult in a somewhat American countryside is great. So let's start with the protagonist, and just like the protagonist, there's not much to say. In fact, I believe this is the only Far Cry game without a voiced main character. I'll be honest here, as much as I love this game, this aspect of it is probably my only issue. I could even go as far as to give a hot take and say if this game had a voiced protagonist that was actually engaging, it genuinely could be the best Far Cry game ever released. I know, crazy right? Anyway, silently moving on from this, the game instantly starts off with your fellow colleague attempting to capture a cult leader, Joseph Seed, in his hometown, which also happens to be a church. Some characters in the game argue that it might not be the best plan, considering the cult operates like a heavily armed militia, equipped with various military weapons. It's even questionable how they even acquired such extensive firepower for their guerrilla warfare. But then again, we do have to remember that this is America. The story takes off immediately after the unsuccessful arrest, as the helicopter you were aboard is brought down. You find yourself saved by a rugged survivalist who sets you on a mission to free Hope County from the clutches of Eden's Gate. There's no backup, no means of seeking assistance, and law enforcement avoids the county due to the presence of the well-armed cult. The world of Hope County is now free to explore. The actual narrative of the game involves eliminating Joseph Seed's 3 siblings, John, Jacob and Faith, who hold authority over different regions and aspects of the cult's activities. And once they're dealt with, it's time to confront the father himself. And let me just focus on the main villain of the game for just a moment, and that is Joseph Seed. And what a villain he is. If you take the fact that he looks like Seth Rollins out of the picture, he's definitely on par with the likes of Vass and even Pagan Min as antagonists. Maybe even better. The writing of his character is honestly incredible. The game does such a great job of making you feel somewhat connected to him where you don't know whether to hate him or understand him. It's quite insane to think about when you know that he managed to build a successful cult that gained control over an entire region, all while evading government intervention. Only when the deputy takes action does the situation actually begin to change. However, Joseph subjects you to immense psychological torment through his mentally distorted family members. His character is so well written that he's purely driven solely on manipulation and not even the desire for money or power, just like a typical villain would. Every action that we, the protagonist, would take in the world of Far Cry 5 has its repercussions and will end up catching the attention of Joseph Seed's family members. This can lead to unexpected confrontations where you must escape their clutches. However, it does become pretty evident that these encounters don't actually define the main story. The true story lies in your interactions with the individuals who resist joining Eden's Gate. The encounters with the Seed family serves as intermittent moments, shedding light on the deeply unpleasant nature of their characters. Throughout the entire story, you won't exactly be alone trying to take the Seed family down. You'll receive support from a resistance group, which includes 9 AI companions with rich background stories that can be unlocked. Additionally, you can even recruit other generic allies on the go. I'll talk about this more in the next part. Let's talk about the gameplay of Far Cry 5. The game introduces a vast skill tree called perks that you can unlock by completing missions, activities or finding specific magazines, particularly in prepper stashes. The range of weapons and vehicles available is fantastic. It's a treat to fly helicopters and planes with ease. The perks provide additional items like parachutes, grapples and wingsuits, very reminiscent of Just Cause 3. The game boasts an impressive variety of guns, many of which embody the stereotypical all-American setting, including recognizable classics like AR-15s, M14s, and M60s. Far Cry 5 also expands melee combat, setting it apart from other entries into the series. It strikes the perfect balance between practicality and outrageousness, allowing you to wield multiple shovels as spears against enemies. One of Far Cry 5's standout features is its extensive roster of companions, surpassing any previous entry in the series. Throughout the game, you can call upon friends with unique abilities for assistance. Human and even animal NPCs can be summoned once their associated side quests are completed. This builds upon the guns for hire mechanic from Far Cry 4 and the animal companions from Far Cry Primal, offering a simple yet robust system to select and partner with your favorite ally. The companions exhibit a diverse range of skills, allowing you to choose the most suitable one for each mission. For example, there's Peaches, a pet cougar who excels in close quarters combat against the hordes of Eden Gate's enemies. There's Nick Rye, an Adelaide Drubman who provides invaluable air support to their plane and helicopter. Far Cry 5 takes a departure from the traditional tower climbing mechanic that's found in previous games. Instead, it introduces an enjoyable experience of seamlessly moving between locations, engaging in combat, meeting new characters who share vital information, and discovering notes that are scattered throughout different regions. Each note unveils new places and unlocks missions, ensuring a more natural sense of progression, which honestly I prefer. So there you have it. I loved Far Cry 5. The game to me was more than just an open world game. It had everything that I enjoyed and overall gave me such a thrilling experience. Maybe at times the game can be somewhat overwhelming to keep track of all the key characters and objectives. However, the enjoyable world, story, cast of characters and gameplay adds to the overall fun. I will say though, the idea of a mute protagonist is something Ubisoft should never try again. They did bring back a fully fledged protagonist in Far Cry 6, which did make that pretty entertaining. So I guess they did learn from that mistake. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.